The rain hammered against the tall windows of Meridian, one of Manhattan's most exclusive restaurants. Inside, crystal chandeliers cast warm light over white tablecloths and guests dressed in designer labels. Outside, the storm turned Fifth Avenue into a river of umbrellas and yellow cabs. Sarah Mitchell stood at the entrance, water dripping from her worn coat onto the marble floor. Her 6-year-old daughter, Emma, clutched her hand, wide-eyed at the elegance surrounding them. Sarah's heart pounded. This wasn't her world. She knew it. Everyone in that restaurant would know it too. But tonight was different. Tonight was Emma's birthday, and Sarah had saved for 6 months to afford one meal here. One perfect memory to replace all the struggles. All the nights Emma had asked why they couldn't eat at nice places like other kids. A hostess approached, her smile professional but her eyes already judging. She took in Sarah's faded jeans, her daughter's hand-me-down dress, the cheap shoes leaving puddles on the expensive floor. Before Sarah could speak, a waiter appeared. Marcus. His name tag gleamed gold against his black vest. He was young, maybe 25, with the kind of confidence that came from working in places where people tipped more than Sarah earned in a week. Marcus looked at Sarah, then at Emma, then back at Sarah. His expression shifted from neutral to something colder. "I have a reservation," Sarah said, her voice steady despite her nerves. "Mitchell, 7:30. Marcus didn't even check the podium. He crossed his arms. "I'm sorry, but I don't see any reservation under that name." Sarah pulled out her phone, fingers trembling slightly. She showed him the confirmation email, the receipt for the deposit she'd paid 2 weeks ago. $20 she couldn't really afford to lose. Marcus glanced at it for half a second. "Our system shows nothing. Perhaps you made a mistake. This restaurant has a very exclusive clientele. We need reservations months in advance." "But I made mine 2 months ago," Sarah insisted. "Please just check again. It's my daughter's birthday." Emma tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Mommy, maybe we should just go to McDonald's." "It's okay." The words broke Sarah's heart. Emma was always so understanding, so mature for her age. Too mature. She'd learned early that wanting things only led to disappointment. Marcus's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "That sounds like an excellent idea, young lady. McDonald's is much more appropriate for families like yours." Sarah felt heat rise to her cheeks. Around them, conversations had quieted. Other diners were watching now, some with pity, others with the kind of disdain reserved for people who didn't know their place. "Listen," Sarah said, keeping her voice low. "I have a confirmation. I paid a deposit. I have every right to be here." Marcus stepped closer, lowering his voice so only Sarah could hear. "Look at yourself. Look at your daughter. Do you really think you belong here? These people pay more for wine than you probably make in a month. You're embarrassing yourself. Save what's left of your dignity and leave before I have to call security." Sarah's vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall. Not here. Not in front of Emma. She'd promised herself she'd stopped crying years ago, when Emma's father left them with nothing but debt and broken promises. She was about to turn, to leave, to take Emma to McDonald's and pretend this humiliation never happened. When the restaurant's heavy door opened behind them, the atmosphere changed instantly. Conversations didn't just quiet. They stopped. Forks paused midair. The hostess straightened her posture so quickly it looked painful. Marcus's face went from smug to pale in seconds. Sarah turned. A man stood in the doorway, rain dripping from his dark coat. He was tall, maybe 40, with salt and pepper hair slicked back and eyes that could cut glass. Everything about him screamed power. Not the kind that came from money alone, but from something deeper, something dangerous. 2 men flanked him, both built like they crushed stones for breakfast. They wore suits that probably cost more than Sarah's car, and their eyes swept the room with the practiced efficiency of people who made threats for a living. The man in the center, the one who commanded attention without saying a word, walked forward. His shoes clicked against marble with the steady rhythm of inevitability. He walked past the frozen hostess, past the gawking diners, past Marcus, who looked like he might faint. He walked directly to Sarah. For a moment, she thought she was in trouble. Maybe she'd accidentally offended someone powerful. Maybe this was security coming to remove her. Then he did something that made the entire restaurant gasp. He took Sarah's hand, lifted it gently, and kissed it. His lips barely touched her skin, but the gesture was unmistakable. Respectful, reverent even. "Sarah Mitchell," he said, his voice deep and smooth as expensive whiskey. "It's been too long." Sarah's mind raced. She had no idea who this man was. She'd never seen him before in her life. But something in his eyes told her to play along, that he was offering her a way out of this nightmare. "Yes," she managed. "Too long." He smiled, and it transformed his face from intimidating to almost charming. "And this must be Emma." He crouched down to the little girl's level. "Happy birthday, princess. I have something special planned for you tonight." Emma looked at her mother, confused but delighted by the sudden attention. The man stood and turned to Marcus. His smile vanished. "Is there a problem here?" Marcus looked like he might vomit. His hands shook. "No, Mr. Castellano. No problem at all. I was just... We were just... You were just what?" Castellano's voice dropped to something dangerous. "Refusing service to my guest? On her daughter's birthday?" "There was a mistake with the reservation," Marcus stammered. "Computer error. I was about to fix it." "Were you?" "Because from where I was standing, it looked like you were about to throw a single mother and her child out into the rain." The restaurant was so quiet Sarah could hear her own heartbeat. "Mr. Castellano, I swear, I didn't know she was what? Human? Deserving of basic respect." Castellano stepped closer to Marcus. "Or did you mean you didn't know she was under my protection?" Marcus looked ready to cry. "I'm so sorry. Please, let me seat them immediately. The best table. Compliments of the house." Castellano turned back to Sarah, his expression softening again. "Would you do me the honor of joining me? I have a private room upstairs. Much quieter. Better for birthday celebrations." Sarah knew she should be terrified. This man was clearly connected to something dark, something dangerous. The way people reacted to him, the way even the restaurant manager had appeared from the back office and was now sweating through his expensive shirt. But all she could think about was Emma's face, the wonder in her daughter's eyes, the way the stranger had defended them when no one else would. "We'd be honored," Sarah said. Castellano offered his arm. Sarah took it, feeling the solid muscle beneath the expensive fabric. He nodded to one of his men, who immediately scooped Emma up onto his shoulders. The little girl squealed with delight. As they walked through the restaurant, every single person watched. The silence was absolute. Castellano led them to a private elevator Sarah hadn't even noticed before. The doors closed, shutting out the stares and whispers. Emma giggled from atop the bodyguard's shoulders. "This is the best birthday ever." Sarah looked at the man beside her. This stranger who just turned her worst night into something miraculous. "Who are you?" she whispered. Castellano's eyes met hers. There was something in them. Sadness, maybe, or recognition. "Someone who knows what it's like to be judged for things beyond your control," he said quietly. "Someone who believes Emma deserves to have her birthday wish come true." The elevator opened to a private dining room that looked like something from a movie. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the Manhattan skyline glittering through the rain. A table was set for 3, with flowers and candles and a cake that must have cost a fortune. "How did you?" Sarah started. Castellano smiled. "I own this restaurant, among other things. When I heard what was happening downstairs, I came immediately." "You own Meridian?" His smile widened slightly. "I own a lot of things, Sarah, including the loyalty of every person who works here. Marcus will be looking for a new job tomorrow." Sarah's mind spun. This powerful, dangerous man had just upended her entire night, saved her from humiliation, given Emma the birthday of her dreams. But why? Castellano pulled out a chair for Emma, then one for Sarah. He sat across from them, and for a moment, the dangerous aura faded. He just looked tired, human. "Because 10 years ago, someone did the same for me," he said softly. "When I had nothing. When people looked at me like I was trash. One person showed me kindness, and it changed everything." He looked at Emma, who was already eyeing the cake with barely contained excitement. Pay it forward, she told me. When you have the power, use it to help others the way you were helped. Sarah felt tears threatening again, but these were different. Castellano raised his hand, and immediately waiters appeared with plates of food Sarah couldn't even pronounce. The best of everything. For Emma. For her. Tonight, he said, we celebrate. Tomorrow we talk. But for now, let's make sure this young lady has a birthday she'll never forget. Emma beamed, and Sarah realized something. This stranger, this dangerous man with his bodyguards and his empire, had just given her daughter something more precious than an expensive meal. He'd given her a memory of being valued, of being protected, of matching. And as the rain continued to fall outside, as Marcus was presumably packing his things downstairs, Sarah allowed herself to breathe, to smile, to believe, just for tonight, that maybe the world wasn't as cruel as she'd learned to expect. The dinner was magical. Emma ate pasta with truffle oil, giggled at the waiter's attempts to pronounce her name in Italian, and blew out candles on a cake shaped like a castle. Through it all, Castellano watched with an expression Sarah couldn't quite read. Something between contentment and melancholy. When Emma finally fell asleep in her chair, exhausted from excitement, Castellano's driver appeared with a blanket. He draped it gently over the little girl. She's beautiful, Castellano said quietly. You've raised her well. Sarah's throat tightened. I've done my best. It hasn't been easy. The best things never are. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Through the windows, Manhattan glowed like a jewel box. Sarah had lived in this city her entire life but had never seen it from this angle. From this height. From this side of the glass. Castellano poured her wine. Expensive wine. The kind she'd only seen in movies. Tell me your story, he said. The real one. Sarah hesitated. She didn't talk about her life. Not to strangers. Not to anyone. But something about this man, this dangerous savior, made her want to speak. There's not much to tell. I got pregnant at 19. Emma's father promised forever, then disappeared when things got hard. I dropped out of college. Worked 3 jobs to keep us afloat. Made it work. Made it work. Castellano's lips curved slightly. That's one way to describe surviving. We survived. That's what matters. Is it? His eyes met hers. Or do you deserve more than just survival? The question hit harder than Sarah expected. When had she stopped wanting more? When had just getting through each day become enough? I work at a diner in Queens, she continued, looking away. Morning shift, 5 days a week. Then I clean offices at night, 3 days a week. Emma stays with my neighbor, Mrs. Chun. She's kind. Doesn't charge much. And when do you sleep? Sarah laughed, but there was no humor in it. When I can. Between shifts. On the subway sometimes. Castellano's jaw tightened. And Emma's father? Gone. Sends a card on her birthday sometimes. No money. No calls. Just gone. Men like that don't deserve to be called fathers. The venom in his voice surprised Sarah. She looked up and saw something dark flash across his face. Old pain. Old rage. You have children? She asked. Castellano's expression shuddered immediately. No, I've never been blessed that way. The word blessed struck Sarah as odd coming from a man who clearly lived in shadows. A man whose mere presence could silence an entire restaurant. A man who, by his own admission, owned things. Lots of things. Before she could ask more, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned, then silenced it. I should let you go, he said. It's late. My driver will take you home. Sarah nodded, but curiosity gnawed at her. Why did you really help us tonight? The truth. Castellano stood, walked to the window. For a long moment he didn't speak. When he did, his voice was different. Vulnerable. When I was 12, my mother took me to a restaurant. Nothing fancy. Just a local place in Brooklyn. We'd saved for months. It was her birthday. She wanted to feel special just once. He paused, his reflection dark against the glittering city. The owner took one look at us and said we weren't welcome. Said we looked like we couldn't pay. My mother tried to show him the money, but he called her a liar. Called her worse things. In front of everyone. Sarah's heart ached. She never took me out again. Never tried to feel special again. 3 years later, she was dead. Worked herself into the ground, trying to give me a better life. I'm sorry, Sarah whispered. Castellano turned back to her. Don't be sorry. Be angry. Be furious that people like Marcus exist. That they look at women like you, at children like Emma, and decide you're not worthy. That your money isn't good enough. That your dignity is negotiable. His intensity made Sarah's breath catch. I built everything I have from nothing, he continued. I clawed my way up from streets where people like Marcus wouldn't dare walk. I made myself powerful enough that no one could ever look at me that way again. He moved closer, his eyes locked on hers. But power means nothing if you don't use it to protect those who need it most. Tonight, I saw my mother in you. I saw myself in Emma. And I couldn't walk away. Sarah stood, her legs shaky. Thank you. For everything. For making her birthday special. For defending us. Castellano smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Don't thank me yet. What do you mean? He pulled out a business card. Heavy cardstock. Embossed lettering. Just a name and a phone number. Tomorrow someone will call you. A lawyer. He'll explain that Marcus has been fired and that Meridian will compensate you for tonight's treatment. Standard procedure. Sarah took the card. Confused. That's not necessary. Really. Tonight was enough. It's not about tonight, Sarah. It's about every night. Every shift at the diner where customers treat you like you're invisible. Every office you clean where people leave messes because they think you're beneath them. Every time Emma asks why you're so tired and you have to lie and say you're fine. How do you? Because I see you. Castellano's voice was fierce now. I see every single mother working herself to death because the world decided she wasn't worth investing in. I see every child growing up thinking they're not good enough because society treats their mother like she's disposable. Sarah's vision blurred. No one had ever put her struggles into words like that. No one had ever acknowledged the weight she carried every single day. I want to help you, he said. Really help you. Not charity. Not pity. Opportunity. What kind of opportunity? Castellano hesitated. And for the first time that night, he looked uncertain. That's what we'll discuss tomorrow. When you've had time to think. When Emma isn't here. When you can make a clear decision without emotion clouding your judgment. Sarah's instincts screamed warning. This man was dangerous. She knew that. Everyone in that restaurant had known that. Whatever he was offering came with strings. Possibly chains. But another part of her, the part that was so tired of struggling, that wanted Emma to have more than hand-me-downs and apologies, that part whispered. Listen. I should go, she said finally. Castellano nodded. His driver materialized, as if summoned by thought. He carefully lifted Emma, who stirred but didn't wake. In the elevator, Sarah watched Castellano's reflection in the polished doors. He stood perfectly still, hands in his pockets, eyes distant. Whatever demons he carried, they were heavy. The lobby was empty now. Marcus was gone. The manager approached, stammering apologies Sarah barely heard. Castellano dismissed him with a look. Outside, rain had stopped, but the streets still gleamed wet. A black car idled at the curb. Not just any car. A Mercedes. The kind with bulletproof glass and privacy screens. The driver opened the door. Sarah slid in with Emma still sleeping against her shoulder. The leather was softer than her bed at home. Castellano leaned into the doorway. Tomorrow, Sarah. Think about what you want. What Emma deserves. What you both deserve. And if I say no, then you say no. His eyes held hers. I'm many things. But I'm not a man who forces anyone into anything they don't want. The door closed. The car pulled away. Sarah watched through the tinted window as Castellano stood on the curb. Rain-soaked and powerful and somehow lonely. Emma stirred. Mommy, did we have fun? Sarah kissed her daughter's forehead. We did, baby. We really did. Was that man magic? Sarah laughed despite everything. Maybe. In a way. I liked him. He was nice. Nice wasn't the word Sarah would use. Dangerous. Powerful. Complicated. But nice? Maybe. In his own way. The car drove through Queens. past the diner where Sarah would be working in 6 hours, past the building where she'd be cleaning offices tomorrow night, past every reminder of the life she'd built from ruins. When they reached her apartment building, the driver opened the door. He handed her an envelope. From Mr. Castellano, he said simply. Inside was $5,000 in cash and a note in elegant handwriting. For Emma's future. No strings. Just a birthday gift from someone who believes she deserves the world. Sarah's hands shook. This was more money than she'd seen at once in years. More money than 3 months of brutal work. She looked up, but the car was already pulling away. In her tiny apartment, Sarah laid Emma in their shared bed. She stared at the money spread across their kitchen table. At the business card with its simple phone number. Tomorrow someone would call. Tomorrow she'd have to make a choice. Tonight, she'd let her daughter sleep peacefully, dreaming of castles and cakes and powerful men who treated them like they mattered. Tomorrow everything would change. Sarah just didn't know yet whether that change would save them or destroy them. Sarah didn't sleep that night. She sat at her kitchen table, staring at the money, at the business card, at the life she'd built from scraps and stubbornness. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Castellano's face, the way he'd looked at Emma, the fury in his voice when he'd defended them, the way Marcus had crumbled under his gaze. At 5 in the morning, Sarah gave up on sleep. She showered, dressed in her diner uniform, and kissed Emma goodbye. Mrs. Chun arrived right on time, like always, smelling of jasmine tea and mothballs. "You look tired, dear," Mrs. Chun said, settling into the worn couch with her knitting. "Bad night," Sarah lied. At the diner, everything was the same. The coffee was burnt. The regulars were demanding. Tips were sparse. But Sarah couldn't focus. She mixed up orders, forgot refills, earned complaints from customers who barely looked at her face. By noon, her manager pulled her aside. "Sarah, what's going on? You're not yourself today." "I'm fine. Just tired." "You're always tired. But today you're distracted." "That's different." Sarah wanted to scream, wanted to tell him about the restaurant, about Marcus, about the dangerous man who'd kissed her hand and given her more money than she'd make in 3 months, about the choice she'd have to make. Instead, she said, "I'll do better. Promise." Her phone rang during her break. Unknown number. Sarah's heart hammered as she answered. "Miss Mitchell?" A smooth, professional voice. "Female. My name is Catherine Walsh. I'm calling on behalf of Mr. Castellano." Sarah stepped into the alley behind the diner. "Yes, Mr. Castellano would like to meet with you this evening. 6 o'clock. He'll send a car to your address. I work tonight. I clean offices from 7 to midnight." A pause. "Mr. Castellano is prepared to compensate you for any lost wages. This meeting is important, Miss Mitchell." Sarah's pride flared. "I don't need his money." With respect, Catherine's voice cooled slightly. "Mr. Castellano isn't offering charity. He's offering opportunity. Whether you accept is entirely your choice, but dismissing it out of pride would be foolish." The words stung because they were true. Sarah had been surviving on pride for years. Pride didn't pay rent. Pride didn't buy Emma new shoes. Pride didn't change anything. "Fine," Sarah said. 6 o'clock. Excellent. The car will arrive at 5:45. Dress casually. This is a conversation, not an interview. The line went dead. Sarah stood in the alley, surrounded by dumpsters and the smell of old grease, and wondered what the hell she was doing. This man was dangerous. Everyone in that restaurant had known it. The bodyguards, the way people froze when he entered. But he'd been kind to Emma. He'd seen Sarah struggle and done something about it. And whatever he was offering, it had to be better than cleaning toilets at midnight while her daughter slept alone with an elderly neighbor. Didn't it? Sarah stood in the alley, surrounded by dumpsters and the smell of old grease, and wondered what the hell she was doing. This man was dangerous. Everyone in that restaurant had known it. The bodyguards, the way people froze when he entered. But he'd been kind to Emma. He'd seen Sarah struggle and done something about it. And whatever he was offering, it had to be better than cleaning toilets at midnight while her daughter slept alone with an elderly neighbor. Didn't it? The rest of her shift crawled by. Sarah called her supervisor at the cleaning company, claimed she was sick, absorbed his irritation. She couldn't afford to lose that job. Couldn't afford anything, really. But something told her this meeting mattered more. At home, she found Emma playing with Mrs. Chun, building towers from blocks Sarah had found at a thrift store. "Mommy," Emma ran to her. "Can we have spaghetti like last night?" Sarah's heart broke a little. "We'll have mac and cheese tonight, baby. The regular kind." Emma's face fell but recovered quickly. "That's okay. Mac and cheese is good too." Mrs. Chun gave Sarah a knowing look. "Special night last night?" "Very special," Sarah said carefully. "A birthday surprise. She's been talking about that man all day. The nice man with the fancy restaurant. Says she wants to marry someone like him when she grows up." Sarah laughed despite her anxiety. "She's 6, Mrs. Chun. 6-year-olds know what kindness looks like." Mrs. Chen's eyes were sharp behind her glasses. "They also know when their mothers are scared." "What's going on, Sarah?" "I have a meeting tonight. An opportunity, I think. With that man." "How did you?" "I'm old, not blind." Mrs. Chun set down her knitting. "That man is powerful. Dangerous, maybe. But he looked at you and Emma like you were precious. Like you mattered. That kind of man either destroys you or saves you. Nothing in between." The words chilled Sarah. "I know. So which do you think he'll do?" Sarah looked at Emma, happily building towers that would inevitably fall. "I don't know. But I have to find out." At 5:45, the Mercedes appeared. Emma pressed her face to the window, delighted. Mrs. Chun watched with ancient eyes that had seen too much. "Be careful," she whispered as Sarah left. "And be smart. They're not always the same thing." The drive took 30 minutes. Not to a restaurant or office. To a brownstone in Brooklyn. Elegant but understated. The kind of place that whispered money rather than shouting it. Inside, the bodyguard from last night led Sarah to a study. Floor-to-ceiling books. A desk that looked antique. Leather chairs worn soft with age. It smelled of wood polish and old paper. Castellano stood by the window watching the street below. He wore jeans and a simple shirt. No suit. No armor. He looked younger. More human. "Sarah," he said, turning. "Thank you for coming. I almost didn't. That's honest. I appreciate that." He gestured to a chair. "Please, sit. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Wine? Water is fine." He poured from a crystal pitcher, handed her a glass. Their fingers brushed. Sarah felt electricity. "If you're comfortable with people watching your daughter," he said, his tone shifting to something more casual and inviting, "I'd like to thank you for joining me tonight. I know this isn't easy, taking time away from Emma and trusting a stranger." Sarah took a breath and looked around the room, feeling both out of place and oddly at ease. "Actually," she said carefully, "Mrs. Chun is with Emma. She's wonderful with her. And honestly, if you're rooting for us, for me to figure out what comes next, maybe you could take a moment to subscribe to whatever comes of this story. Because I have a feeling this is just the beginning of something bigger." She smiled nervously, surprising herself with the words. It felt strange, acknowledging that her life might actually be turning into something worth following. Castellano smiled. A real smile. "I like that. Optimism. It's rare in this city." He sat across from her, leaned forward. "Sarah, I'm going to be direct. I own businesses. Restaurants, yes. But also real estate, import-export, investments. Some of them are completely legitimate. Some exist in gray areas. And some," he paused, "some would get me arrested if certain people knew the details." Sarah's mouth went dry. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I don't lie. Not to people I respect. And I respect you, Sarah. You've survived in a world designed to break people like us. You've raised a daughter who's kind and hopeful despite seeing her mother struggle. That takes strength most people can't imagine." He stood, paced. "I need someone I can trust. Someone smart. Someone who understands what it means to be invisible, because invisible people see everything. Someone who knows how to survive." Sarah's pulse quickened. "What are you offering?" "A job. My personal assistant. You'll manage my schedule, handle communications, interface with my various businesses. You'll be my eyes and ears in rooms where I can't be. That sounds like a secretary. It's not. Castellano's eyes were intense. Secretaries are replaceable. What I need is a partner. Someone who thinks. Someone who challenges me. Someone who isn't afraid to tell me when I'm wrong. And the pay? Castellano named a figure that made Sarah's vision swim. It was more than she made in a year. More than she'd dreamed of making in 5 years. That's insane. That's what you're worth. Plus benefits. Health insurance for you and Emma. A car. An apartment in a better neighborhood. Private school for Emma if you want it. Sarah's hands trembled. Why me? You could hire anyone. Someone educated. Someone from your world. Because I don't trust people from my world. Castellano's voice was fierce. They want things. Power. Money. Connections. You just want to give your daughter a better life. That's honest. That's real. That's something I can build on. The room spun. This was too much. Too fast. Too good to be true. What's the catch? The catch is the life you'll be entering. People will want to use you to get to me. Others will resent you for having access they don't. You'll see things that will scare you. Learn things you can't unlearn. And Emma, she'll grow up knowing her mother works for a man like me. Sarah stood. Her legs shook but held. And what kind of man are you, exactly? Castellano met her eyes. The kind who protects what's his. The kind who never forgets a debt or an insult. The kind who would burn down the world for people he cares about. He moved closer. But also the kind who keeps his word. Who values loyalty above everything. Who would never let harm come to you or Emma. Not from me. Not from anyone. Sarah's mind raced. This was crazy. Accepting would mean entering a world she didn't understand. Refusing would mean going back to the diner, to the cleaning jobs, to the endless grinding exhaustion. I need time, she whispered. Take it. Castellano handed her another card. This one had an address. Come here tomorrow night. 7 o'clock. I'll show you what your life could look like. Then decide. Sarah took the card. Her hand was still shaking. As she turned to leave, Castellano's voice stopped her. Sarah, one more thing. She looked back. Whatever you decide, the money I gave you last night is yours. No strings. Emma's birthday gift. Keep it even if you walk away. Tears burned Sarah's eyes. Why are you doing this? Because someone should have done it for my mother. Castellano's voice broke slightly. Because Emma deserves better. Because you deserve better. And because I can. The car drove Sarah home through Brooklyn streets. She watched the city pass. The same city that had chewed her up and spit her out 1,000 times. Maybe, just maybe, it was time to bite back. Sarah didn't tell anyone about the offer. Not Mrs. Chun. Not the other waitresses at the diner. Certainly not Emma, who was still living off the high of her castle cake and the nice man who'd made her feel like a princess. The next evening, Sarah stood in front of her closet, staring at clothes that suddenly felt like costumes from someone else's life. Nothing seemed right. Nothing seemed worthy of whatever Castellano wanted to show her. She settled on her only dress. Black. Simple. Bought for a funeral 3 years ago and worn exactly twice since. Mrs. Chun arrived early, took one look at Sarah, and smiled. You're going to say yes, aren't you? I don't know what I'm going to do. Yes, you do. Mrs. Chun patted her hand. You're terrified, but you're going to say yes. Because you're tired of being invisible. Because Emma deserves more. Because that man saw you when the rest of the world looks through you. Sarah's throat tightened. What if it's a mistake? Then it's your mistake to make. Mrs. Chen's eyes were gentle but firm. You've been playing it safe your whole life, Sarah. Where has safe gotten you? The question haunted Sarah during the drive. Where had safe gotten her? Tiny apartment. Perpetual exhaustion. A daughter who thought McDonald's was a treat and apologized for wanting things. Maybe it was time to be reckless. The address led to a high-rise in Tribeca. The kind of building with a doorman who wore white gloves and didn't blink at Sarah's worn dress. He simply smiled and directed her to the private elevator. Top floor. The elevator opened directly into a penthouse that made the restaurant's private dining room look modest. Windows wrapped around 3 walls, offering views of the Hudson River. the glittering bridge, the city stretching endlessly in all directions. Castellano stood at the windows, backlit by sunset. He turned when she entered. "Sarah, welcome. This is—" She couldn't find words. Incredible didn't cover it. Neither did beautiful or stunning. "This is what I'm offering." He walked toward her, gesturing to the space. 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, a kitchen you'll actually want to cook in, a room for Emma with windows facing east so she can watch the sunrise. Sarah's heart hammered. This is too much. This is the apartment that comes with the position. Castellano's voice was matter-of-fact. "It's owned by one of my companies. Sitting empty is a waste. You'd be doing me a favor by living here." "A favor?" Sarah almost laughed. "You're offering me a penthouse as a favor? I'm offering you a life." Castellano moved to a folder on the marble counter. Inside were papers, contracts, benefits packages, everything spelled out in black and white. Sarah approached slowly, as if the papers might burn her. She read, health insurance with 0 deductible, dental, vision, a salary that made her dizzy, retirement contributions, education fund for Emma. It was everything she'd stopped allowing herself to dream about years ago. "There's a school 3 blocks from here," Castellano continued. "One of the best in Manhattan. Emma would have art classes, music, small classrooms with teachers who actually care. She'd be safe, challenged, given every opportunity to become whoever she wants to be." Sarah's vision blurred. "Stop. Stop what? Stop making this sound perfect. Stop making it sound easy. There has to be a catch. There's always a catch." Castellano was quiet for a long moment. Then he walked to a cabinet, pulled out a bottle of whiskey, poured 2 glasses. He handed one to Sarah. "The catch is me." He drank. "I'm not a good man, Sarah. I've done things that would horrify you. Hurt people. Destroyed lives. Built an empire on foundations most people would call criminal." Sarah's hand tightened on the glass. "But I'm also loyal. Fiercely protective of the people in my circle. And I pay my debts. You'd be entering that circle. You'd see things, know things, be part of things. That's the catch. Once you're in, walking away becomes complicated." "Complicated how?" He met her eyes. "You'd know too much. Have access to too much. I'd need assurance that you wouldn't betray me. That you'd never sell information about my businesses, my contacts, my operations. And if I did, the temperature in the room dropped. Then I'd have to treat you like any other threat." Castellano's voice was ice. "I don't want to. I hope I never have to. But I need you to understand what you're agreeing to. This isn't just a job. It's a choice about what side of the line you want to live on." Sarah's pulse raced. She should run. Should grab Emma and disappear. This man was admitting to criminal activity, threatening her however politely, but she didn't move, because underneath the fear was something else. Something that had been dormant for years. Anger. At the world that had written her off. At the Marcuses who looked at her like garbage. At every person who'd made her feel small and worthless and invisible. "If I say yes," Sarah said slowly, "I need to know exactly what I'm saying yes to. No surprises. No discovering later that I'm involved in something I can't live with." Castellano nodded. "Fair. Sit. I'll tell you everything." And he did. For the next hour, Castellano laid out his empire. The legitimate businesses were real but served as covers for the more profitable ventures. Money laundering through his restaurants. Import operations that brought in goods that weren't exactly legal. Loan sharking but only to people who could afford the risk. Protection services for businesses that couldn't go to the police. Nothing violent, he insisted. "I don't deal drugs. Don't traffic people. Don't prey on the weak. My operations exist in the gray spaces where desperate people and desperate situations meet. Like you and my mother," Sarah said quietly. "Exactly." His eyes were fierce. "The world is designed to crush people like us. I decided to build something that gives us leverage. That lets us survive and thrive without begging from people who look down on us." Sarah absorbed it all. It should have terrified her. It did terrify her. But it also made a twisted kind of sense. The system was rigged. Castellano had just found a way to rig it back. What would I actually do? Day to day? Manage my calendar. Coordinate with my various businesses. Handle sensitive communications. Accompany me to meetings. Keep me organized. Think of yourself as a chief of staff. You'd need to be smart, discreet, and willing to learn quickly. And Emma would never be involved. Never be at risk. I have lines I don't cross, and children are the brightest one. She'd go to school, make friends, live a normal life. Better than normal. She'd have everything you never did. The temptation was overwhelming. Sarah looked around the penthouse, imagined Emma running through these rooms, laughing. Imagined herself not exhausted, not broken, not invisible. She thought about Marcus, about every person who'd treated her like she didn't matter, about the life she'd been grinding through, day after day, with no end in sight. Castellano watched her, patient, waiting. Finally, Sarah spoke. I have conditions. Name them. Emma never finds out about the illegal parts. As far as she knows, you're a businessman and I'm your assistant. Nothing more. Agreed. If I ever feel she's in danger because of this, I walk away. No threats. No consequences. We just disappear. Castellano hesitated, then nodded. You have my word. Emma's safety is non-negotiable. And I don't participate in anything violent. I don't care if it's necessary or justified. I won't be part of hurting people. I wouldn't ask you to. Sarah took a deep breath. Then yes, I'll take the job. Castellano's face transformed. The dangerous mask slipped, revealing genuine relief and something that might have been joy. You won't regret this. I already regret it, Sarah said honestly. But I'm doing it anyway. He laughed. A real laugh. That's the spirit. He extended his hand. Sarah shook it. His grip was firm, warm, solid. The grip of a man who kept his promises, for better or worse. When do I start? Tomorrow. I'll have movers pack your apartment. You and Emma can stay here tonight if you want. Get a feel for the place. Tonight? Unless you'd rather wait. Sarah thought about her cramped apartment. About Emma sleeping in a bed they shared because there wasn't room for two. About Mrs. Chen's couch and burnt coffee and the smell of old grease. Tonight, she said firmly. Castellano smiled. Welcome to the family, Sarah. As he pulled out his phone to make arrangements, Sarah walked to the windows. The city sprawled below, a million lights promising a million possibilities. She'd crossed the line, made the choice, entered the gray space where people like Castellano operated. Tomorrow she'd call the diner and quit. She'd tell Emma they were moving. She'd start learning how to navigate a world she didn't fully understand. Tonight, she'd let herself feel something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Even if that hope came wrapped in danger. Even if it meant aligning herself with a man who operated outside the law. Even if it made her complicit in things she'd once judged from a distance. Because Emma deserved better. Because Sarah deserved better. And because sometimes survival meant making deals with devils who happened to have kind eyes. Castellano appeared beside her, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. To new beginnings, he said. Sarah took the glass. To new beginnings. They drank as the city glittered below, neither of them acknowledging that some beginnings were also endings. That the woman Sarah had been, the struggling single mother who played by rules that never protected her, was dying. And someone new, someone stronger, someone willing to exist in the shadows was being born. The first month was chaos. Emma adjusted faster than Sarah expected. The new apartment became her kingdom. She'd run from room to room, squealing with delight at the space, at the bathtub big enough to swim in, at the window seat where she could read and watch the river. Mrs. Chun visited often, her knowing eyes taking in every detail. She never asked questions, never judged, just brought dumplings and tea and watched Sarah transform from exhausted waitress to something else entirely. The work was brutal in a completely different way. Castellano hadn't exaggerated. Sarah managed 7 different businesses, coordinated with lawyers and accountants who spoke in code, learned to read between lines in conversations that seemed innocuous but carried weight. She accompanied Castellano to meetings, sat silently while men in expensive suits discussed numbers that meant everything and nothing. Learned to recognize which restaurants were legitimate and which were fronts, which import shipments contained what they claimed and which held secrets. Castellano was patient, demanding but patient. He'd explained things once, expected her to remember, pushed her to think critically, to anticipate problems, to offer solutions instead of just identifying issues. "You're too smart to just take notes," he'd say. "Think, Sarah. What's the problem here?" And she did. She'd analyze situations, suggest alternatives, catch details that others missed. The skills she'd developed juggling 3 jobs, managing Emma's schedule, stretching every dollar. Those translated into an ability to see patterns, anticipate needs, manage complexity. Within weeks, Castellano relied on her for everything. But the real test came on a Thursday evening, 6 weeks after Sarah started. They were in Castellano's office in Brooklyn. Sarah was organizing files when 3 men arrived unannounced. Large men, angry men. One had scars across his knuckles that told stories Sarah didn't want to hear. The leader pushed past the bodyguard at the door. "Castellano, we need to talk. Now." Castellano looked up from his desk, his expression neutral. "Make an appointment. This can't wait." The man's voice was dangerous. "You shorted us on the last shipment. 10% light. That's 50 grand, Castellano. 50 grand of our money." Sarah's heart hammered. She stood frozen by the filing cabinet, suddenly very aware that she was witnessing something illegal, something that could turn violent. "Your count was wrong," Castellano said calmly. "I have the receipts, the weight certificates. Everything matched. Then your certificates are lies." The man stepped closer. "And I don't appreciate being called a liar in my own city." "This isn't your city, Marco." Castellano's voice dropped to something lethal. "It's mine. Has been for 5 years. Since I removed the last person who thought otherwise." The temperature plummeted. Sarah saw the bodyguards shift position, hands moving toward concealed weapons. Marco's men did the same. They were seconds from violence. Sarah's mind raced. She'd been organizing those shipping files all week. She knew every detail, and she'd noticed a discrepancy, a timing issue with warehouse transfers. "Excuse me," she heard herself say. Every head turned. Marco looked at her like she was an insect. Castellano's expression was unreadable. "Who the hell is this?" Marco demanded. "My assistant." Castellano's tone warned Marco to tread carefully. Sarah forced her voice steady. "Mr. Castellano, may I show you something?" She pulled a file, approached the desk on shaking legs, spread out papers. Shipment manifests, warehouse receipts, transfer logs. The shipment was split, she said, pointing. Half went to the usual warehouse, but 10% was diverted to a secondary location because of a facility issue. "Look, same date, same batch number. The weights match perfectly when you combine both deliveries." Castellano studied the documents. His expression didn't change, but Sarah saw something flicker in his eyes. Relief, admiration. He looked at Marco. "My assistant is correct. Your people picked up from the primary location but missed the notification about the secondary delivery. The missing product is sitting in a warehouse in Red Hook. Has been for 3 days." Marco snatched the papers, studied them. His face shifted from angry to embarrassed. "Why didn't anyone tell us?" "Because your people don't read their emails." Castellano's voice was ice. "Next time, check your facts before you storm into my office making accusations." Marco's jaw worked. He wanted to argue, wanted to save face, but the evidence was irrefutable. "Fine," he said finally. "We'll pick up the rest. But this kind of confusion is entirely on you," Castellano finished. "Now get out. And Marco, next time you enter my office without an appointment, you won't leave on your own feet." The threat hung in the air. Marco and his men left, their exit less aggressive than their entrance. When the door closed, Castellano turned to Sarah. His expression was impossible to read. "You just saved us from a war," he said quietly. "I just read the files," Sarah replied, her hands still shaking. "No." Castellano stood, walked around the desk. "You stayed calm under pressure. thought clearly when everyone else was ready to fight. Found a solution that let Marco save face while proving we were right. That's not just reading files, Sarah. That's strategy. He studied her face. Most people would have run. Hidden. Let the men handle it. You stepped into the middle of a potential bloodbath and solved the problem with paperwork. I was terrified, Sarah admitted. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Castellano's smile was genuine. But you didn't let it control you. That's the difference between surviving and thriving in this world. Over the following weeks, word spread. Castellano's new assistant was sharp, reliable, unflappable. People started coming to Sarah with questions, with problems. She became a gatekeeper, filtering what reached Castellano, handling what she could alone. The money changed things too. Emma had new clothes. Not thrift store finds, but actual new clothes. She started at her new school, came home bubbling about art class and her new friend Sophia, whose dad was a surgeon. Sarah had time, actual time, to sleep, to breathe, to be present when Emma talked instead of mentally calculating how many hours until her next shift. But the guilt gnawed at her. One night, 3 months in, Sarah found Castellano in his study. He was drinking whiskey, staring at old photos. Pictures of a woman who looked like him. Same eyes, same defiant chin. Your mother? Sarah asked softly. He nodded. This was taken a week before she died. She'd just finished a double shift. You can see the exhaustion in her eyes. Sarah moved closer. She looked strong. She was. Castellano's voice was rough. But strength doesn't pay bills. Doesn't fight disease. She worked herself to death because no one would help her. Because the world decided she wasn't worth investing in. He looked at Sarah. I built all this so no one like her would ever be helpless again. So women like you could have choices. Real choices. Not the illusion of choice the system offers. Sarah understood then. This wasn't just business for Castellano. It was personal. It was revenge against a world that had taken his mother. It was a monument built from grief and rage and love. I need to tell Emma something, Sarah said. About what you do. Who you are. She's getting older. Asking questions. Tell her I'm a businessman who gives people like us opportunities the regular world denies. Castellano met her eyes. It's the truth. Just not all of it. And when she's older, when she figures it out, then you tell her the rest. That the world is complicated. That good and bad aren't always clear. That sometimes survival means existing in gray spaces. He paused. Or you don't. You could leave, Sarah. Take everything you've earned. Start fresh somewhere else. I'd help you. Give you enough money to never worry again. No conditions. No threats. Sarah stared at him. You'd let me go? Just like that? I told you. Emma's safety is non-negotiable. If you think staying puts her at risk, I won't stop you. The offer was genuine. Sarah could see it in his eyes. He'd let her walk away with enough money to build a new life. He'd keep his word. But Sarah realized something. She didn't want to leave. Not because she needed the money anymore. Not because she was trapped. But because for the first time in her adult life, she felt like she mattered. Like her intelligence was valued. Like she was building something meaningful. Even if that something existed in shadows. I'm not going anywhere, she said firmly. Castellano's face transformed. Relief. Gratitude. Something deeper. Thank you, he said simply. That weekend, Sarah took Emma to Central Park. They had a picnic. Real food. Expensive cheese and fresh bread and fruit that didn't come from discount bins. Emma lay in the grass watching clouds. Mommy, are we rich now? Sarah considered. We're comfortable, baby. Because of Mr. Castellano? Because I have a good job. Emma rolled over, her young face serious beyond her years. Do you like him? I respect him, Sarah said carefully. He's been very kind to us. I think he likes you. Likes you. Sarah's breath caught. Emma, that's not. He looks at you the way princes look at princesses in movies. Emma's voice was matter-of-fact. Like you're special. Sarah didn't know how to respond. She hadn't let herself think about Castellano that way. He was her employer, her savior, her connection to a world that was both terrifying and intoxicating. But Emma wasn't wrong. The way Castellano looked at her had changed. Less like an employee, more like something else. Mr. Castellano lost someone important to him, Sarah said finally. Someone who reminds him of us. That's why he helps us. Maybe, Emma said. Or maybe he was lonely and we make him happy. Out of the mouths of children. That night, Sarah stood in her penthouse living room, watching the city lights. Emma slept peacefully in her own bedroom. The refrigerator was full. The bills were paid. The future felt possible. She'd made a deal with a devil. Crossed lines she'd once thought uncrossable. Entered a world where good and bad blurred into infinite shades of gray. But Emma was thriving. Sarah was thriving. And maybe that was enough. Maybe survival wasn't about staying pure. Maybe it was about making hard choices and living with the consequences. Maybe redemption wasn't about being perfect. It was about protecting the people you loved, whatever the cost. Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from Castellano. Thank you for today. For everything. You've changed my life more than you know. Sarah smiled, typed back. You changed ours first. In the reflection of the window, Sarah barely recognized herself. She looked rested, confident, powerful. The struggling single mother was gone. Someone new had taken her place. And Sarah wasn't sure if that should scare her or set her free. 2 years later, Sarah stood in the same penthouse, but everything had changed. The apartment felt like home now. Emma's artwork covered the refrigerator. Photos lined the walls. A life had been built here, in this space that once felt too grand to touch. Emma was 8 now. Taller, smarter, still kind, but with an edge of confidence Sarah had never possessed at that age. She excelled at her school, had friends whose parents were doctors and lawyers and entrepreneurs. She took piano lessons, spoke passable French, dreamed of becoming an architect. Sarah barely remembered the diner, the cleaning jobs, the bone-deep exhaustion that had been her constant companion. That life felt like it belonged to someone else, a ghost she'd shed like old skin. She ran Castellano's empire now, not just assisted, ran. She'd proven herself invaluable, made connections, solved problems, earned respect in a world that didn't give respect freely. The businesses had expanded. New restaurants, new investments, all legitimate on paper, with the gray operations carefully hidden beneath layers of shell companies and legal protections Sarah had helped construct. She'd learned, grown, become someone she never imagined possible. But the biggest change wasn't the money or the power or the penthouse. It was Castellano himself. Somewhere between the late-night strategy sessions and the shared dinners and the moments when he'd looked at Emma with such tender protectiveness, something had shifted. The professional boundaries had blurred, then dissolved entirely. It happened gradually. A hand that lingered too long. Conversations that stretched past midnight. The way he'd started asking her opinion not just on business but on everything. The way she'd stopped thinking of him as her employer and started thinking of him as more. 6 months ago, after a particularly brutal negotiation that Sarah had handled flawlessly, Castellano had kissed her. Right there in his office. Desperate and tender and inevitable. I've wanted to do that for a year, he'd whispered against her lips. Only a year? Sarah had smiled. I've wanted it longer. They'd kept it quiet. Professional in public. But in private, they'd built something neither expected. A partnership that went beyond business. A connection forged in mutual respect and shared history and the understanding that they'd both survived worlds designed to destroy them. Emma adored him. Called him Nico now instead of Mr. Castellano. He attended her piano recitals, helped with homework, taught her chess and let her win just often enough to keep her competitive. He was careful, never overstepped, never tried to replace her father, just offered steady presence and genuine care. Sarah had never been happier, or more terrified, because happiness in Castellano's world came with risk, with enemies, with the constant awareness that everything could shatter if the wrong person discovered the wrong secret. Tonight was one of those nights. Sarah sat in Castellano's Brooklyn office, reviewing security reports. Someone had been asking questions, digging into their operations, a federal prosecutor with a reputation for taking down organized crime figures. Castellano paced, his face darker than Sarah had seen in months. How much does he know? Enough to be dangerous. Sarah studied the documents, but not enough to move. He's fishing, looking for someone willing to talk. No one will talk. Everyone talks eventually. Nico, you taught me that. He stopped pacing, looked at her. His expression was raw. I won't let anything happen to you. Or Emma. Whatever this costs, whatever I have to do. Sarah stood, moved to him, put her hands on his face. We'll handle it. Together. Like we handle everything. You could still leave. His voice cracked. Take Emma somewhere safe. I'd give you everything you need to disappear. And leave you to face this alone? Sarah's voice was fierce. Not a chance. Sarah, I'm not the scared waitress you met 2 years ago, Nico. I'm not helpless. I'm not disposable. I'm your partner. In business and everything else. So we face this together or not at all. Castellano pulled her close, buried his face in her hair. I don't deserve you. Probably not, Sarah smiled against his chest. But you're stuck with me anyway. They worked through the night, called lawyers, reviewed every transaction, identified vulnerabilities, built defenses. By morning they had a plan. It would take time, money, careful maneuvering, but they'd survive. They always did. Sarah went home as sunrise painted the city gold. Found Emma already awake, reading at the window seat. Morning, baby. Morning, mommy. Emma looked up. You were out all night. Is everything okay? Just work stuff. Nothing for you to worry about. Emma studied her with eyes too wise for 8. You look tired. But happy. That's new. New? You used to look tired and sad. Now you look tired and happy. It's better. Sarah's throat tightened. Come here, baby. Emma climbed into her lap, still small enough to fit perfectly. Sarah held her daughter, breathing in her shampoo smell, feeling her steady heartbeat. Are you happy, Emma? Really happy? So happy, mommy. Emma pulled back to look at her. I love our home. I love my school. I love that you smile now. And I love Nico. Sarah's heart swelled. Yeah, he's good to us. He makes you laugh. And he's teaching me chess even though I'm terrible at it. You're getting better. Because he's patient. Emma's voice went soft. Is he going to be my dad someday? The question hung in the air. Sarah had wondered the same thing. Castellano had never mentioned marriage. Never made promises about forever. But the way he looked at them, the way he protected them, the way he'd woven them into his life, it felt like forever. Would you want that? Sarah asked carefully. I think so. Emma considered. He's not my real dad. But he's more of a dad than my real dad ever was. Is that okay? That's more than okay. Baby, that's perfect. They sat together as the city woke up. As people rushed to jobs and lives and struggles Sarah no longer shared. She'd climbed out, clawed her way up, made impossible choices and lived with impossible consequences. And she'd do it all again. That evening, Castellano came to dinner. Not unusual anymore, but tonight felt different. He was nervous, kept fidgeting with his napkin. Emma noticed. Nico, are you okay? I'm fine, princess. Just thinking. About what? About how lucky I am. He looked at Sarah, then back at Emma. To have you both in my life. Emma grinned. We're pretty great. You are. Castellano took a breath. Which is why I wanted to ask you something. He pulled out a small box. Opened it. Inside was a ring. Simple. Elegant. A single diamond that caught the light and threw rainbows across the table. Sarah's heart stopped. Sarah Mitchell, Castellano said. His voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. 2 years ago, I watched you refuse to be invisible. Refuse to accept that the world had written you off. You walked into my life and changed everything. Made me remember why I built this empire. What it was all for. He took her hand. You're the strongest person I know. The smartest. The most capable. You're an incredible mother. An irreplaceable partner. And the woman I want to spend the rest of my life with. His thumb brushed her knuckles. I know my world is complicated. Dangerous. that I'm asking you to tie your future to mine despite all the risks. But I promise you this. I will protect you and Emma with everything I have. I will love you both fiercely and completely. And I will never, ever take for granted the gift of being part of your family. He looked at Emma. If it's okay with you, princess, I'd like to marry your mom. Be part of your family for real. Emma's face lit up like the sun. Yes. 1,000 times yes. Castellano laughed, tears in his eyes. And you, Sarah? What do you say? Sarah looked at this man. This complicated, dangerous, impossibly good man who'd seen her when she was invisible. Who'd given her daughter a future. Who'd made her believe in second chances and gray spaces and love that existed outside fairy tale definitions. Yes, she whispered. Yes to all of it. He slipped the ring on her finger, kissed her while Emma cheered. And for a moment, Sarah let herself believe that happy endings were possible, even for people who lived in shadows. 3 months later, they married. Small ceremony, just close friends. Emma as flower girl, beaming in a dress that made her feel like royalty. Sarah wore white, not because she was pure or innocent or untouched by the darkness of Castellano's world, but because white meant new beginnings, fresh starts, the chance to write a different story than the one the world had assigned her. As Castellano kissed her, as Emma threw petals, as their small chosen family celebrated, Sarah thought about the terrified woman who'd stood in Meridian's entrance 2 years ago, the one who'd been ready to slink away in humiliation. That woman was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, someone who'd learned that survival sometimes meant making deals with darkness, that love could bloom in unlikely soil, that family wasn't about blood or perfection but about choosing each other every single day, despite everything. The prosecutor eventually moved on to easier targets. The businesses continued to thrive. Emma grew up confident and kind, never knowing the full truth of how her stepfather made his money but understanding that he loved her fiercely. And Sarah? Sarah became a legend in Castellano's world. The woman who'd walked in from nowhere and become indispensable. Who'd proven that strength came in unexpected packages. That the invisible people were often the most powerful because they saw everything while being seen by no one. Years later, when Emma graduated from college with honors, when she designed her first building, when she stood on stages and accepted awards, she'd thank her mother for teaching her that circumstances didn't define destiny. That being underestimated was an advantage. That fighting for better was always worth it. And Sarah would think about that rainy night, about Marcus's sneer, about the moment Castellano had kissed her hand and changed everything. She'd think about how one act of kindness could ripple outward, how seeing someone's worth when others couldn't was its own form of magic, how the people society dismissed were often the ones with the most to offer. She'd think about survival and sacrifice and the gray spaces where real life happened. And she'd smile, because her story didn't end with rescue. It ended with partnership. With love earned through choice and struggle and shared battles. It ended with a woman who'd refused to stay invisible finally being seen. Not by the world, which still didn't understand her, but by the people who mattered. The family she'd built, the life she'd fought for, the future she'd claimed despite every odds stacked against her. And that, Sarah knew, was the truest happy ending of all.